enough accountability from government. And you also said earlier that it seems that we do not even understand what it means to be in a democratic government. Okay, so we are here now, and you have kind of tactically ruled out the fact that this help is going to come from the West, like we usually get aid and all of that from them. So what steps in practical terms now do we need to adopt as Africans in order to, number one, be able to liberate Africans mentally, from to take up their responsibility and demand accountability and governance from their governments, especially because they still have a whole lot of things to battle with. I mentioned earlier about the relationship between poverty and the gullibility that you mentioned. So a lot of them don't even have access to information. The internet is expensive. Power is nowhere to be seen. Bad roads, no infrastructure. Social infrastructure is almost at its lowest in almost every country of Africa. So we have these problems ongoing. Now, the problem of poverty is also very prevalent. An average African person is looking basically at what to eat, what to drink, to meet their immediate needs. And then the sight of the future is not in question here. So I'm asking, in terms of mobilization, in terms of maybe reorientation, what practical steps would you suggest right now for Africa to begin to understand its situation and begin to plan better for it?
Yeah, thank you for that. And before I answer that question, I just want to quickly chip in one of your questions regarding the West. Okay. Now, name me one country that the West have successfully transformed to a first world country, to a democratic process. None. They can condemn, talk, pump in money, give him more aid. Tell me one that has been transformed and become a model. They say, oh, we became what we are by the power of the West. Not one. Every country that was able to change and revamp to a more stable country did it internally. They did it themselves. They fought against it. They said, this is what we want. And we will demand it, even if it means our blood. I just want to put that out there. Now, when a protest is instituted, we shouldn't take a break. Do a protest and take 1 year break, take 2 year break. Like I said, this is not the 1980s or 1970s, even the 1990s, when there's an unorganized protest, or when there's an injustice going on in some remote part of Inouye or whatever it is. I can see it in the United States. Somebody can see it in China. So the ability to do what the military were doing in the 1980s and 70s and the 1990s, it's impossible for them to do it now. Before you know it, the world will see everything. So we have more tools in our hand to be able to change the status quo. If we don't want the way the system is being run, the people has the power to change it. But whether they understand their power, it's a whole different conversation.
All right, this is interesting, especially because you have raised it from the point of NSAS protests in Nigeria. Yeah. And I would like to bring this on because we all do witness what happened during the NSAS protest. At the end of the day, with the entire civil disobedience and, citizens coming together and all of that, it still ended up, the whole thing was rounded off with military action. Now, allegations and accusations exist as to whether people were killed and all of that. But that's not my point here. Okay. But my point here is that it ended up with a military action. Even in a Nigeria, who seems to be enjoying the largesse of democracy at the moment, whose democracy seems to be firmly rooted and solidly built at the moment, even though you have also opined earlier that it is not infallible at the moment. But where do we draw the line at this point? Because when citizens move, when citizens move in a democratic system, it always ends up, being reprieved by the government they are met with all sort of things that we cannot explain or expect. The Nigeria case is a very serious one, and like you have said, a lot of nations, a lot of people would have wanted to take on from there, probably learn, outside Nigeria now, and even the Nigerian people, I believe, will have organized themselves more and maybe do more. But we saw how it ended. So it seems to me, like we have said so far, that the military is not far away from the democratic government. So again, I ask you, how do we totally remove the influence of the military from these democratic administrations that we have in Africa?
You think we have a democracy in Nigeria? We don't have a democracy in Nigeria. So you are going to have a situation whereby the military is going to be inflamed and they're going to be in the interest to intervene. What is democracy? You think democracy is about election, or the ability to elect your representative government? That's what you think, but that's not all what democracy is about. Democracy is about good governance. Democracy is about access to basic necessities of life. Democracy is about getting access to things that we need as a citizen of the country.
Does representative government, does representation in governance, does it not also mean that democracy is being entrenched? Because
I'm not completely ruling out the fact that the ability to elect your leader is part of the dividend of a democratic society. I'm not removing that.
Okay.
But that is not the only reason. That's not the only benefit of a democracy. You can elect your leader all you want, and the leader take the entire asset for himself, and the rest and left the rest hungry. Is that a democratic process? Democratic process whereby the system is fair. There's equitable justice. There's fair place, an equal playing field, where you as a son of a senator, you're not viewed more than somebody who is a son of a carpenter. It's about equality and fairness. Nigeria and most African country is grossly unfair. That is why you have the disparity in the distance between the rich and the poor. That is why we are one of the most poorest nations in the world. Right now, 500 million Africans are in extreme poverty. And you tell me that's a democratic continent? No. When it's so unfair, then it's not democratic. When your ability to get a position in a company dependent on who you know, not your ability to function in that position, that's not a democratic system. That is an unfair system.
Okay. Well, I would like to ask you this. I've always asked people who talk in this direction. A lot of people have said democracy is good, and I totally agree it is. We've seen countries where democracy is the way forward, and they are reaping the dividend. But there are also countries across the world that do not practice democracy. And somehow they have good governance where it is concerned. So can we then totally say that democracy is the only way to rule Africa? What about this sudden resurgence? What if it poses, the hope that these countries actually won? What if the military governments are even able to provide good governance for the people?
You raise a very pertinent question. No one said democracy is the only access to better life for an African country. There are lots of countries in the world right now who are not democratic and who are highly advanced. In fact, the Western democratic nations are negotiating with them. I can name them. You know them. Whether it's China, the rest of them. So they are undemocratic, but yes, they are industrialized. So democracy does not guarantee that you are going to have good government. Democracy does not guarantee that your nation will be developed. Because people think that, or most people think, not you per se, think that democracy, once we have democracy, everything is all checked out. No. It's just one part of it. Good government is having good leaders. Having to know that the reason why you are there is for the people and not for yourself. And this is what is absent from African style of democracy.
All right. Going forward now, let's go back to Sudan.
Okay.
The situation is here. The United Nations, met, and I'm not privy to what their discussions have been so far in this case. But I want to ask, what is the role of the United Nations, and how can they bring a solution to the ongoing crisis in Sudan?
The UN has a huge role to play in this. Obviously, that is the international body that should ensure that things like this don't happen. Sudan is a member of the United Nations body, and the governing body must immediately intervene, either by usually in the past they used to bring in military intervention and all that stuff. I don't think we are there yet. I think their role, their soft pressure, the UN can assert. When I was mentioning the West, I was not mentioning the West independently. I was mentioning the West in collaboration with the United Nations to assert soft power on the new military government, letting them know that this is not acceptable. This is not going to happen. We're not going to let this stand in Sudan. Look at what he's saying now. Oh, I'm ensuring that in 2023 we shall still have the election as promised. Why are you the one to lead the people to 2023? This is what military dictators always tell us. Remember what happened during when Babangida annulled the 1993 election, and then installed a temporary interim government of Ernest Shonekan. And what happened? Abacha came in, dissolved the entire thing, and said, I'm going to promise we're going to go back to democracy. We're going to go back to transition to democracy. And what happened? They cancelled, annulled the entire constitution, and clamped down on opposition, and tried to consolidate himself for years and years and years until he finally died in power. So, we have seen this before. And this is the pretense military leaders do say when they come into power. It's not committed to 2023 election. No, we know that's not going to happen. Before you know it, it's going to taste the goodies of power and don't want to get out of that. And then before you know it, start postponing it. So they should really, really resist him and prevent him from asserting his authority in that country.
Okay, as we finally round off on this episode of the show, I'd like to get your thoughts on what you think is the solution, what Sudanese, especially at this time, when, they're under a military takeover, and what should they be doing in order to reinstall democracy to their country?
They're doing exactly what they should be doing. They're protesting. They're going out on the street. They're demanding that the government return the country back to the interim government because they're tired of the 30 years. Remember 30 years of Bashir? They're tired of that.
But aren't you afraid of the ripple effect? We just give an example in Nigeria,
right?
When people, marched out and said police brutality was too much. They wanted a certain arm of the police force.
And they killed them.
And, and all of that happened. And the result.
Right.
And aren't you afraid
So you
that...
think the solution should be then to just fold your hands and do nothing? Absolutely not.
Okay.
I remember one of the founders of the American democratic system said, told the American public, you can have a republic if you can keep it. The people have to be able to keep their republic and say, okay, this is what we want. Yes, people are going to die. Obviously, that's what happened. So to say that because they're going to kill us, let's remain the way we are, I don't think is a viable solution because it's not a proper way to set a future for a country because the next generation are going to face the same thing and it's going to continue like that. Eventually, people have to say, we have to look at what happened in Egypt and Libya during the Arab Spring. They rose up and said, we don't want this. And then they changed. So I think the desire to be afraid that we will be killed should not be there. They should continue to protest, and the world will see. And if it becomes whereby these people they start killing civilians, then the UN and the world body should intervene and come in to stop it.
All right. Thank you so very much, Labode Obanor, social justice advocate and president, League for Social Justice. I hope that you continue to do what you are doing.